of this, you isolate keep the Afrikaans, but this quickly. Here we go. Okay, en dit is de Afrikaans one. The isolated farmstead, die geïsoleerde plaasopstal. Een hamlet is een geheugie. Village is een boerendorpie. A town is een dorp. A city is een stad. Metropolis stays the same. Conurbation, and a megalopolis stays the same. The one thing that I want you to remember though, your isolated farmstead, your geïsoleerde plaasopstal, is an element of commercial farming. We're going to look at pictures that we downloaded earlier. I'll show it to you later, of isolated farmsteads. So please remember, despite the isolated farmstead being the smallest settlement, it is by far not the poorest. Usually those are very, very rich farmers living, right? So your geïsoleerde plaasopstal, dis gewoonlik baie ryk boere wat daar woon, right? Because that's associated with commercial farming. Now, how do we differentiate between and urban settlements? Onderskei ons tussen landelike en stedelike nedersettings. Now, if you look at the picture, landelik is the Afrikaans word for rural. Stedelijk is the Afrikaans word for urban. Look at the two pictures on the slide in front of you. You can clearly see the slide on the left-hand side is showing you farming activities. En op die rechterkant kan ons sien, daar is even, wys ons 'n stad. Okay? Now, you know that rural settlements are single function, unifunctional. And they consist of primary activities. Jou landelike nedersettings, hulle is enkel functioneel en primaire activiteite vind daar plaas. So in other words, a fishing village along the west coast is rural because it has one function, fishing, and fishing is a primary activity. A forestry town along the south coast, Harkeville, it is rural. Why? It has one function, forestry. Forestry is a primary activity. With your urban areas, met jou stedelike gebiede, hier multifunctioneel, wat daar vind beide secundaire activiteite as ook tertiaire activiteite plaas. Okay? Oh. So back to my English PowerPoint again. Oops, that's Afrikaans one. Right. Okay, single functional primary activities, multifunctional. Now, the question here says, why are dispersed settlements better from an economic point of view? Now, in order to answer this question, we first have to quickly look at what are dispersed settlements. Now, dispersed settlements and nucleated settlements refer to the spread of the buildings. Now, grade 12 is very, very important. Dispersed settlements and nucleated settlements refer to the spread of the buildings. Verspreide nedersettings. Nedersettings is spelled incorrectly there. Okay? Now, what do we mean by that? When the settlement is dispersed, it means that the buildings are far apart. And when your settlement is nucleated, it means the buildings are close together. So look at in front of you. The picture on the left-hand side shows a typical town. This is a typische dorpie. See the town, see the rural areas around it. But in the center there, we have a town. Now, in the middle, sien ons a dorpie. And if you see, look at that town, we can see clearly that the buildings are very, very close together. So all settlements from a town upwards, a town, a city, a metropolis, a connovation, a megalopolis, they are all nucleated because their buildings are extremely close together. When it comes to rural areas, however, if you look at the picture under the word dispersed, the buildings are widely separated. That is an isolated farmstead. Right? That is an isolated farmstead. Those are the buildings of one farmer. But the rural areas can also be in the shape of a village. And in the village, your buildings are closer together. And then you will have a nucleated settlement. Now, people in this case, this question should actually have read, why are dispersed rural settlements better from an economic point of view? Now remember, the moment you see the word pattern, patroon, dispersed and nucleated refer to the pattern. So whenever you see the word pattern, in your mind you tell yourself, the answer can only be nucleated or dispersed. Alright. So, look at the picture on the left. There are people living in a village type of setup, a little town, a little village. Looks bigger than a village to me. Now, can you see all the various loose pieces of land? I'm not sure if you can see what I'm pointing at here. There are individual fields. So one person living in this village here might own 2 or 3 fields spread around. And that is what is meant by loose patches of land. You cannot do all your farming at one time because you might have to tend to a field here, and then later on go and tend to a field there, and later on tend to a field over there, for example. So often you will have a foreman that's managing your land for you. It's difficult to make independent decisions. Imagine all these people are growing vegetables, cabbages and carrots and stuff, and I'm over here and I decide I'm going to farm with this. My neighbors are not going to like me very much because my goats will eat up everything. Okay? I'm forced to live in the village. There's lots of traveling to my various fields. Mechanization becomes difficult. How do I get the machine from here, combine harvester, for example, from here to there? Whereas with a dispersed settlement, remember these are commercial farmers. The farm is a large single unit. The farmer manages the farm himself or herself, making independent decisions. It's my farm. I decide what I want to grow, when I want to grow it. Yeah, I live on the farm. I live on the farm. There's no traveling. There's no traveling to take place. And mechanization becomes very easy. So that's why your dispersed settlement is better from an economic point of view. Now have a look at this. Have a look at this little map quickly. Name the settlement pattern at 10. So 10 is pointing to that group of buildings in that group. So we want the pattern. Remember what I said. When you see the word pattern, your answer can only be nucleated or dispersed. Let's go to the Afrikaans PowerPoint quickly. And get to where we are. Right? So just to quickly go through it, los stukkies grond, die voorman bestuur die lijntjies, daar is geen onafhanklike besluite nie, jy woon in die dorpie, daar is baie rondreisery, en meganies is dit baie moeilik. En die verspreide patroon, het 'n groot enkele stuk grond, jy bestuur self jou plaas, jy kan onafhanklike besluite neem, jy woon op die plaas, daar is geen of baie min rondreisery, en mechanisasie is baie maklik. So here's the same slide that was in the English PowerPoint. Name the settlement patterns by 10 and give 2 economic advantages. So I think you're quite clear, 10 points there. So pattern, patroon, is it nucleated or is it dispersed? It is definitely verspreid, dispersed. There's one, quite a distance apart. So this is a dispersed pattern of a verspreide patroon. So we've named it. 2 economic advantages. Here you can give any of those. Large singles of land that the farmer has, the farmer manages the farm himself, makes independent decisions, lives on the farm, etc. Okay, let's go have a look here. spread, and then there's all the economic advantages of this particular pattern. Right. Let's finish up the English PowerPoint quickly. Get it to the same place. Right, so now we're going to look specifically at rural settlement. But I think before we go there, let's just do a little bit of a change. You've been listening to my voice all the time. I want you to take out your notes. I want you to take out your notes and go to this activity 32. I think it is on page number should be the same as mine, 51. Okay? Activity 32. Okay, you don't have the answers. This thing should take you 6 minutes to do, but I've got the answers up in front. So the first question, this comes from an exam paper. Remember the start of each question. The start of each question is going to have short questions. Elke vraag begin met 15 punte. Kort vraag. 15 marks of short questions. Here's one-word answers, match the columns, etc., etc. Okay? So these are typical short questions. A group of people building infrastructure and communication links that function together as a single integrated system, and the proper answer there is a settlement, is a nedersetting. Okay? Then, let me just open up the Afrikaans one as well, and go to that same page. Just give me 1 second to get there. People, while you're waiting for me to find that spot, you can just try to fill in those answers on your own solo. The learners who do not have this, please contact me. I'll give you my email address, and I will email it to you, or ask your team to contact me, and I will email this to them, and then they can just print it and give it to you. This resource is a very, very good resource for studying because it covers all the sections of work. Alright, so there we are. It's activity 32. Uit 'n groep mense gebouwe infrastruktuur en kommunikasieverbindings wat saam as 'n enkele geïntegreerde stelsel functioneer, is 'n nedersetting. Die ligging van 'n nedersetting in verhouding tot die omliggende landskap is ligging. In English, that would be situation. So you need to know the difference between situation and site. Site is the actual piece of land on which the settlement is built. That's the site of the settlement. So you could, for example, take your school. The site of your school is the piece of land on which the school is built. The piece of land inside school's fencing. That's the site. So when you describe the site of your school, you can say it is very flat. Maybe you've got a little stream running through the middle of your school grounds. Whatever you're describing the site. When you describe the situation, you are giving the position of your school in relation to the surroundings. So I could, for example, say that my school is found south of the Athlone Stadium. It is found west of Table Mountain, etc. Okay? It is found adjacent to Belgravia Road. So what situation, met ligging, is jy besig om die ligging te gee in relation to the surrounding area or the surrounding environment. 414. The settlement is found in an area where water is scarce. It's a wet point settlement. Right? In Afrikaans praat ons van 'n natstandplaas nedersetting. Now people, a wet point settlement, natstandplaas nedersetting, and a dry point settlement, a droogstandplaas nedersetting, you need to know the difference. So I always remember it in terms of the opposite. Where there is very little water available, people want to stay as close as possible to the source of water. So if you're in the desert, for example, and there's an oasis, there's a spring where water is busy bubbling out of the ground, people will stay at the oasis. For the entire desert area, there will be nobody living. Die hele woestyn sal daar geen mense wees nie. Maar daar waar die oase is in die middel van die woestyn, there you're going to find a lot of people living because water is available. And that is a wet point setting, not some plus nedersetting. It attracts people. It attracts people because water is available. A dry point settlement will look where there's too much water, where water is a threat. So people cannot live close to the source of water because the river, for example, say would flood on a regular basis. And because of that, people tend to live further away from the river. They're going to live at a dry point where they will be safer. Mense gaan woon op 'n droë standplaas waar hulle veilig sal wees. Okay? Die naam wat gegee word aan 'n stad met afhanklike dorpe is 'n metropool, right? It's a town that has independent cities around it, like Cape Town, for example. Cape Town is a metropolis. Why? We've got Bellville, we've got Kells River, we've got all these other towns surrounding Cape Town that are part of the town. 'n nedersetting wat naby aan 'n deurgang deur 'n fisiese versperring ontwikkel, soos byvoorbeeld 'n poort in 'n bergreeks. Dis natuurlik 'n poortdorp, ek het 'n English naam. Die punt waar een tipe vervoer met 'n ander vervang word, is 'n vragverbrekingspunt. In English we speak about the break-up point. And then 'n dorp wat by 'n brug oor 'n rivier ontwikkel, is 'n brugdorp. So London, for example, is an example of a bridge town, because London developed where London Bridge was built over the river. So just quickly, name given with dependent towns is a metropolis. A settlement that develops close to an opening through a physical barrier, we call it a gap town. Your teacher would obviously have given you the example of Worcester or Ceres there. And then the point where one mode of transport is replaced by another when transporting goods is a break-up bulk point. And a town that develops where there's a bridge is a bridge town. Right. Now let's move on to activity 33. Soorte of types nedersettings. Now, when I look at this, before I even look at the questions, I know what's coming. Why do I know what's coming? Because they're showing me on the left-hand side a typical rural environment. I can see the city in the background, sketch A, but here in the foreground I can see this is definitely rural. There are cattle, there's cultivated lands, everything in neat rows, there's farming taking place, I can see a silo on, and in picture number B, we are inside the city. I can see the tall buildings, I can see the trains, the infrastructure, roads, etc. So this is going to be some sort of comparison between rural and urban questions. Right. Refer to set figure 3.1, verwys na figure 3.1, that shows you types of settlements. Match the settlement types to the statements below. So, people, the answers are there. I'm not still going to try to hide it from you or anything. But, oops, I'm going too far. Let's just have a look at them. This type of settlement, is unifunctional. So what does unifunctional mean? It's only one function. So it's obviously settlement A. Reg? Dus ek net een funksie. In this case, the function is agriculture, farming. Associated with tertiary activities, 'n nedersetting wat met tersiêre bedrywighede geassosieer word, is obviously B. Because in the city, that is where we find tertiary activities in place. The smallest of the settlement types, A, your rural. Right? Remember your three smallest ones. Your isolated farmstead, your hamlet and your village are all rural. These settlements are always nucleated. Hulle is altyd kernvormig. Dis B, right? Your city is always nucleated. You don't get dispersed cities. This settlement has a dispersed pattern. The answer is A. Only rural areas can have dispersed patterns. Urban areas cannot have a dispersed pattern. Is an overconcentration of activities. That's B. A metropolis is an example of this type of settlement. It would be B. And then an example of a central place. I did not get to central place towns yet. We're going to get to that afterwards. But we know that it is B. Remember, your central place town is an urban settlement, like a town, it's urban, within a rural environment. Okay, but it is still urban. Okay, I'm going to skip the next page. The next page is just a summary of the entire section. And I'm going to go to rural settlement patterns. Let me just get the Afrikaans people up to speed as well quickly. Okay. So for the Afrikaans people, that is where what we've just done now. Let's just check this quickly. With the people joining us on YouTube, I'm really sorry that you don't have these activities in front of you, but they were delivered to all the schools that registered to be part of the winter school. So the learners that are joining us on the React platform, you will have this actual physical papers in front of you, and the learners joining us on YouTube, you unfortunately just going to have to follow on the screen, but ask educators to contact me. I'll send these documents to them and they can just print it for you when you get back to school. Right. And this is where we are now near the sentence. Now, let's just have a look at what is happening here. What do you see? Let's relieve first. Or guys, there's a mountain. There's the top of the mountain, there's slopes going down, slopes going down. There's another mountain. This is one mountain range. But I can see here, there's a gap through the mountain. And this gap is through the mountain. The roads are going through the gap. What calls the gap? The river. That river there, that is flowing there, that river cut its way through the mountain. We're not going to go into details there now. But there is a gap through this mountain. Then, gebouwen, buildings. So all these are buildings. Bewerkte landerye is cultivated lands. So there is cultivation taking place there, farming. And here, okay, those are cultivated lands. And in the river, we see there's a dam also over here. So we've got some sort of a fair idea of what is happening. Right. Watter naam word aan nedersetting aangegee wat ver van water gelees, omdat water as 'n bedreiging beskou word. What name is going to settlement A? That is situated far from the water source, because water is seen as a threat. We just spoke about that now. So the answer there is obviously a dry point settlement. The droë punt nedersetting, of droë standplaas nedersetting. In Afrikaans, of in English it is a dry point settlement. Noem die nedersettingspatroon by B. Name the settlement pattern at B. Let's go to B. There it is. There's only one building. There's the next building. So look at the question. Pattern. Name the settlement pattern at B. What did I tell you? When you see the pattern, the answer is either going to be nucleated or dispersed. And in this case, it is definitely dispersed. Because there's my one building, there's my next building. So it's isolated or dispersed. Dis geïsoleerd of verspreid. Waarom word nedersetting C kern nedersetting genoem? Why is settlement C a nucleated settlement? Because the buildings are close together. Julle gebouwe is baie naby aan mekaar. That is why it is nucleated, right? People, this stuff's easy. Wat bewys dui daarop nedersetting D 'n waterpunt nedersetting is? Right? So let's look at settlement D. There's settlement D. So how do we know that that is a wet point settlement? Because it's right next to the dam. It's close to a source of water. If this dam was a threat, then people are further away. But they're close to a source of water, so it is a wait, I'm sorry here. We only see pixels at roads high. I'll try to get the definitions here. I'll try to get definitions here. to have a look at it. If there are any other schools that are having the same problem, please let me know. Anyway, I'm going on. I cannot, but the technicians are here in the background, they can hear me. They will try to sort it out for you. So at the moment it's only Roadside that has indicated that they're having a problem, with visuals. Okay. Right. So, why is settlement C referred to nucleated settlement? The buildings are close together. Quick point. Give the name of section E. Let's go back here quickly. This is where E is. Okay? Look at where E is. In the gap. And the answer there, it's a gap town, or gateway town, or gateway village. Okay? That is where it is. It's in the gap through the mountain. Name the factor that has influenced the shape of F. So let's have a look. Where's F? Look at F shape. That's a T-junction. You can see that, okay? And what has caused this particular shape? The intersection of the two roads. Look at the road network. It's a T-junction. And then the shape. The shape. Now, people, when they ask for shape, as hulle vra vir patroon. As hulle vra vir patroon, then they are speaking, shape is speaking about, is it linear? Is it a crossroads village? This patroon, is it linear? Is it rond? And pattern refers to the nucleated or dispersed. Okay, it would seem that Tandakulu is having the same problem. Livingston, Arrowcrazy, Outbay. Okay, well, I'm sorry about that. Let me just try to get someone to sort it out. If you can just give me, I'm just going to move away from here for like literally 15 seconds. Don't go away. I'm just going to get someone to sort this out fast, okay? Alright, sorry about that, people. But I have spoken. I think the problem is the weather. It seems to be weather related. So I'm going to, for the interim, I'm going to go on, and I just want to show Niels that you know the block. There we go. Yeah. So if you see, oh, you can't see anything. Pixels roads. I say here. Arrowcrazy High School.
Justin is talking about, Brown is talking about the butter, I think says up and down in the break. So in the break.
What time is the break? Okay, people, we're going to go on. I'm going to see if I can make the break a bit earlier. Learners and educators. And we're going to go on, but people are working on it, so please stay with us, don't disappear. We are trying to sort it out. It definitely seems to be related to the extreme cloud cover that we have. The WCED network always gives us issues whenever it's a cloud in the sky. So I will in the interim just go on.
Regan, are you checking the geography link?
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, there's a lot of teachers complaining that they can't get visuals.
Someone's from Sagefield. Someone is connected from Sagefield. Frank had no problems. It's teaching from Arrowcrazy. I think the school is in. Anyway, I'm getting some messages now. So I will just go on in the.
Yeah, I just spoke to him and I said to him the bitrate, you're going to up the bitrate.
5.
Okay.
35. Now, let's have a look at this activity. 1. I'm hoping that you can see.
Okay, cool.
You should have
Alright, thanks man. Cheers. Yeah.
Print
Cool.
copy in front of you. So even if you cannot see, I delivered this to quite a few schools myself. We delivered the printed copies to your school. Those schools were registered. So you should have a printed copy of these activities in front of you. Okay, and so, sorry, and the break will be at? Okay, so I'll get a bit earlier. Okay. So people, with somebody working on it, I'm going to make the break a little bit early. I'm hoping it's not going to affect catering at your school. But let's make the break at 10 o'clock. It should have been a little bit later, but let's move until 10 o'clock. And during the break, we'll then up the bit rating and we should get a picture. Right, so as I said, you should have the printed material in front of you, which should give you the ability to stay with me. Right, so activity 35, activiteit 35, is a picture of a settlement. There's a kikkie van nederzetting. Once again, refer to figure 3.1, a photograph of a settlement. Now people, it's important to read. It's important to read. Choose the correct words from those in bracket. Only write the word next to the answer. So for example, if question 3.1.8, the answer is tertiary, you only write down the word tertiary. Right. The photograph is an example. Is it rural or is it urban? Let's have a look. It's definitely rural. It's an isolated farmstead. It is definitely rural. Very dispersed pattern. The settlement is known as an isolated farmstead or a village. Now, I remember this question, when this question came in the exam, the answer given here is village. But to me, this looks like an isolated farm. It could be an isolated farmstead as well. Okay, the picture could be a small village, and I remember particularly here when this question came in the exam, we accepted both village and isolated farmstead, but I can remember clearly most learners wrote isolated farmstead. The physical factor responsible for the choice of site, die fisiese faktor wat die keuse van die nedersettings was the flat land. We can see how flat it is. It's extremely flat, and that is why the buildings and everything were put in that particular site. That is why a site was chosen. The agricultural lands in this photograph are cultivated by machines, because people, I'm going to take this village out here. Don't put village in as your order. It is definitely a isolated farmstead, and this verifies it, that it's cultivated by machines. If it was a village, it would have been cultivated by laborers. Okay, so machines. The settlement depicted is definitely calculated. No, sorry. This is also wrong. This is dispersed, because this is a group of buildings. This is a group of buildings belonging to one farm. Even though the one building is the farmer's house, the other building is his barns, whatever. We look at the entire farmstead. It's one farmstead, and further down the road, a few kilometers, will be another farmstead. So this thing was taken straight from paper. I remember changing this. So it's definitely dispersed. Trust me on this. The product grown in this area is mostly grains or fruit. It is grain. And the second is unifunction. That's farming that is taking place. Okay, if there were fruit, we would have seen lots of trees. These trees here are just trees along the road. But if it were fruit farming, we would have seen rows and rows of trees on the fields. The fruit was being grown. Okay. Issues. I'm going to come back to this. I'm now going to jump to my PowerPoints again. Right. Rural settlement. Landelike nederzetting. So, let's get back to the concept of site. In Afrikaans praat ons van die ligging. Standplaas. Sorry, van standplaas. Ligging is the same as situation. Okay. So, factors that influence choice of site. Now, when people choose the site, you must remember that now, most of the earth has been inhabited by people. But let's go back to a time where there were very, very few people living in a particular area. Where there were very, very few people living in a particular area. We then had to choose where we to settle when people moved to a place for the first time. And the factors on the left: water, fertile soil, fuel, building material, aspect. Those are the sort of things that people looked out for. You needed to have water if you wanted to farm. Remember, if you were the first people moving into an area, there were no shops, there were no pick and pays. You had to grow everything yourself. You wanted a table, you had to make a table yourself. If you wanted clothing, you had to use the clothing yourself. So in order to be self-sufficient, those are the things that people do. They needed a source of water for personal use, for drinking, cooking, washing, but also for agricultural purposes. They needed soil that was fertile so they could grow crops to eat. They needed a source of fuel, which was usually wood that could be burnt to make a fire, that they could use to boil water with, that they could use to cook with. They needed building materials like rocks, or stones, or trees that could be built to build building structures with. Okay? And then the one that is not on this thing here is that you needed, it's on the main slide itself, that you needed good grass for cattle farming, you needed good natural vegetation in the area so that people could farm with sheep and cattle. Right? The other factors are all important, but those five, the water, the fertile soil, the fuel, the building material, and the natural vegetation, to me those are the five most important ones. Then you defend sometimes quite well on your way, the dry sites, away from the marshy land, etc., etc. Okay? So those are all the factors that influence the selection of a site for an area. Let's have a look at the Afrikaans quickly. Die faktore wat standplaas beïnvloed, jammer. Ons soek water vir vrugbare grond, brandstof, boumateriaal, goeie gras vir veeboerdery, etc., etc. Okay? So we have exactly the same thing there. Alright, now, die buitelyn vorm, the shape of cities. Now, this is what I spoke about earlier. When we look at settlement, and we speak, I'm going to say it over and over and over again, wanneer ons praat van die patroon van die nedersetting, when we speak about the pattern of settlement, then your answer is always going to be nucleated or dispersed. Dis kernvormig of dis verspreid. Maar wanneer ons praat van die buitelyn vorm, the shape, here it's round, it's a crossroad, it's linear. You see that, I'll come to the English PowerPoint again now, but can you see that round, crossroads, linear? And at the bottom, there are examples of such settlements, or examples of such settlements. Okay? So, the shape of a settlement is a round settlement. Okay, the English PowerPoint is not as nice as the Afrikaans one. There's a crossroads settlement, and there's a linear settlement here. Here's a crossroad here going across. There's a round. Let's go back to the Afrikaans. Because Afrikaans will show us a little bit more. There's also a round, and we can see the settlement is round. Crossroads, a kruispunt. Okay, there's the one there. There's the other cross. And then linear along a road or a river. Linear settlement. Okay? Julle moet die verskillende buitelynvorms kan identifiseer. You must be able to recognize the different shapes and explain why it has a particular shape. Right. Let's have a look. Here is a card. Here's a section from a topographical map. What do I see? I see a mountain top. 720, 740, 760. That one's 740, which means that's 760, which means this is 780, which means that there's 800 contour. So this is a ridge, a mountain, it's berg, a rug, and from there, it's from 720 meters all the way up to to 800 and then down the other side. Can you see what I'm doing? I'm first analyzing my relief. Now, where's the river? Here, kronkel die rivier. The river is always at the lowest point. There's the river. You with me? Here's my infrastructure. There's the road. There's the road. Plaas op stal. These are farm buildings. Each one is one farmer's farmstead. Okay? Plaasgrense. These are the boundaries of the farms. So this is one farm. There's another farm. There's another farm. Are you with me? So I have now, and then here's a source of water also at D. A water source of waterbron, or water source. Now of what is happening before I start answering questions. Identificeer die patroon. English learners identify the pattern of the settlements by A and D. At A and D. So what is pattern? Nucleated or dispersed. When I look at A, dispersed, far apart. Dit is spreid. So die patroon hier is 'n verspreide patroon, a dispersed pattern. And at D, the buildings are close to each other. It is a nucleated pattern. Dit is kernvormig. Okay? Identificeer die buitelynvorm van die nedersettings. In English, identify the shape of the settlements at B and D. So now it is this one and that one. And I can see this is linear. It's a line. The line is slightly curved, but it is still in a straight line. It's linear. It's a circle. It's circular. It's round. Buitelynvorm. Shape. Noem die factor wat die vorm van nedersettings by B en D beïnvloed het. So, what is the factor that influences the shape of the settlement and of the settlement? So here you can use one of two. I would say the river was probably there before the road. Or you can say the road, the houses are close to the road. But this road here and that river there gives this settlement that linear shape. And this water source, hier die waterbron, hier die neersetting, sy ronde buitelyn vorm. Okay? Are you all happy with that? Let's just go to the English, okay? Because these PowerPoints are slightly different, so yeah. So the English has another question to it. State and explain the climatic factor responsible for the location of settlement C. Now, right. Now look at where settlement C is. It's on the other side of the mountain. It is on the other side of the mountain. Now, that is north. This slope here is facing north. It is a north-facing slope. The only thing is this diagram doesn't tell me which hemisphere it's in. So if this is in the southern hemisphere, that is a north-facing slope, then this slope will receive sunlight all the time. So I think that is the climatic factor, is the aspect. But unfortunately this map shows me where north is, but there's no indication of which hemisphere this map is in. So it's very, very difficult. So on the hemisphere, it definitely has to do with aspect. Okay, rural settlement issues. Now, in this picture, you can see that, sorry, I'm just getting lots and lots of messages here. So there are people that are saying that they're definitely connected without any issues. Phoenix High School students coming and going. So yeah. It seems that many people are having so many issues any longer. Okay. Right, let's go on. Rural settlement issues. Now, people, if you I'm not there, there's a request that I go back to the previous activities. I'm not going to do that now. I will send the teacher guide, the booklet that I'm using on with the answers on it. I will email it to all the educators. I am going to email it to all the educators. People, if you send me messages either on my phone or on the chat, please say the name of your school. Please say the name of the school. I can't remember all. HGRHS. Something high school. I don't know the names of all the schools, especially out of my district. So it's very, very difficult for me to tell the technicians exactly which school. So please put the full name of your school in when reporting technical issues. Thank you. Right. Rural settlement issues. Thank you, Mr. Julius. Okay. Now, in this picture, you see people. Thank you, Ms. Yankees. Okay. So people, all the schools, Harold, Tracy, etc. I'll be stopping a bit earlier. It's only supposed to be at 11, but I'm going to stop at just after 10 o'clock as soon as I'm done with the section to give the technicians a chance to sort that problem out. So if you can just be patient for a few minutes longer, and then we will sort it out. Some schools are actually reporting that the situation is improving. So let's just see what happens after that. Okay, we will have a break, and our first break supposed to have been from 11:15 till 11 for 15 minutes. So we're going to shorten. We will have it from 10 o'clock to 10:15, and then I will work out the rest of the time. So to the schools, I'm hoping that it's not affecting your catering. That is not affecting your catering too much. But let's see what happens. Right. So here we see a couple. Here we see a couple leaving the rural area, moving towards the city. Here is I'm not sure what the couple is in Afrikaans. A paartjie wat van die landegebied naar die stad beweeg. Now the first thing, the most important thing, the movement of people from the rural to the urban areas is called rural-urban migration. Please listen carefully. It is called rural-urban migration. Landelike, stedelike migratie. That is the movement. Rural depopulation is not a movement of people. Landelike ontvolking is nie 'n beweging van mense nie. It is extremely important that you know the difference between rural-urban migration on the one hand and rural depopulation on the other hand. Dit is uiters noodsaaklik dat jy die verskil tussen landelike, stedelike beweging aan die ene hand en landelike ontvolking. Yeah, I'll get your message, Mr. Boy. And the Kulu, Ms. Mandungala, get your message as well. Right, so very important. With rural-urban migration, it is the movement of people, the beweging van mense vanaf die landelike gebiede tot die stede. It is the movement of people from the rural areas to the urban areas. And you need to know that people move because of two types of factors. Because of two types of factors. The first one, push factors, stootfactoren. So these are negative factors where you live in the rural area. Your stootfactoren is negatieve faktore in die landelike gebied wat mense uitstoot. So mechanization, for example, the fact that machines are taking over the jobs, het werk gemechaniseer. Those salaries, mense verdien minder geld. Droughts, crime, unemployment, poor service delivery, etc., etc., etc. All these things are the push factors pushing people out of the rural areas. Then we have the pull factors that attract people to the city. The promise of better jobs, higher salaries, better education, medical facilities, the bright lights of the city. All these things attract people to the cities. Okay. So your stootfaktore, mechanisasie, lae salarisse, droogtes, misdaad, werkloosheid. This is just a few, there's a whole long list hoor. En jy trek faktore wat mense trek, lok na die stad toe, as beter beskikbaar, beter salarisse, opvoeding is altyd beter, mediese fasiliteite, en die nacht. Okay. Peak view is reporting, I can see clearly, but they're still using the old school land cables and not Wi-Fi. So they're getting their signal via the land. So, yeah. Now, what's the difference between landelike stedelike migrasie and landelike omvolking? What's the difference between rural-urban migration and rural depopulation? Very simple. Rural-urban migration is where people are moving from the rural areas to the urban areas. It's the movement of people. That's all it is. People leaving the rural areas to go live in the cities. Mense verlaat die landelike gebiede om in die stedelike gebiede te gaan woon. Of self te gaan huisves. Okay? That's the rural-urban migration. Now, when people leave the rural area to go live in the city, the number of people in the rural area becomes less. So, in other words, instead of 40% of the people in your country living in the rural areas, you now have 30%. The percentage of your total population that lives in the rural areas has dropped. And that is rural depopulation. Dit is landelike ontvolking, where the number of people living in the rural areas becomes less. Where do you feel it, or where the percentage of people, living in the rural areas compared to the urban areas becomes smaller. So, rural-urban migration will lead to rural depopulation. Rural-urban migration will lead to rural depopulation. Landelike volking is 'n resultaat van daardie beweging van mense. So, rural-urban migration can take place without, rural depopulation can take place without rural-urban migration taking place. So, for example, take the COVID virus now. Let's say a particular rural area is particularly hard, and you have lots and lots of people dying in a particular village or in a particular town, in a particular rural area. Then the number of people is going to drop, but nobody moved. The number dropped because of the COVID virus, or because of an earthquake that took place, a natural disaster, or whatever the case might be. So understand the difference between rural-urban migration and rural depopulation. Now, you want to know what the push factors are, forcing people out. You need to know what the pull factors are, attracting people. Then you also need to know what is the effect of rural-urban migration on rural areas. What is the effect of rural migration on the cities? And then lastly, which strategies can we employ to keep the people here so that we don't have these negative effects and those negative effects happening. I'll just go through the Afrikaans first. Geïnteresseerde migrasie, dit results in farmers, leerplaashuise, daar is meer stad wat plaaswoorde byvoorbeeld, meer werkloosheid, minder nuwe leggings in die gebiede, as baie ou mense wat agterbly, winkels sluit, die skole is leeg. Okay? Then, in the urban areas, the crime increases. That's the Kwartaal. That's a samendromming van mense, besoedeling, verkeersweermil, werkloosheid. Those then become your issues. Okay. So, in English, rural-urban migration has negative effects in both the rural and the urban areas. In the rural areas, you are left with empty farmhouses, lots of crime, especially farm murders, unemployment is rife, lots of people without work. Okay? There are fewer new investments that take place. There are more older people left behind. Maybe it's mainly your younger people that will move to the cities to look for work. Your shops will close, school down, and the settlements eventually become ghost towns. Okay. Whereas in your urban areas, there are problems. The crime increases because of all these people moving into the city. Lots of them can't find work. If you look at the last bullet, unemployment. And because they can't find work, they start resort to crime. There's shortage of housing. And we know that this shortage of housing will lead to the establishment of informal settlements. There's lots of overcrowding taking place. This leads to pollution and traffic congestion also. So, these are the problems caused by rural migration in rural areas, and these are the problems caused by rural-urban migration in urban areas. Now, what are the strategies? The important thing is, you must remember, the main reason that people left is because of work. It's because of employment. So, your strategies should be to create employment here so that these people don't have to leave this area. Okay? So that these people don't have to leave this area. So your strategies would go on advertising the town, education, tourism, restoring both and rural schools. Now people, I'm going to come back to this slide. This is where we're going to start. I'm going to leave my PowerPoint presentation open exactly where it is. It is now 10 o'clock. We're only supposed to stop in 45 minutes time, but we need to sort out this technical issue. So, can we please stop again on the dot to the past 10 and 1 second. Sorry if I messed up your catering at your school now, because I know you would have prepared to have your kids have something to eat at 2:45, and we are all 45 minutes early. But please just bear with us. We need to sort out the visuals so that everybody can see the picture clearly. So it is 10 o'clock. We're going to stop right now, and we will meet again at 10:15. Thank you very much.